Hi there, I'm Demetrius Bagley, and I want to share an annual review of Black astrology with you. This is necessarily celebrating International Astrology Day, March 20th, 2021. I want to go back and look at Aries 2020 all the way through Pisces 2021 and the astrological year that has just wrapped up. For sure, a lot happened, right, with the pandemic and the many, many ripples and continued ripples of that. I was reminded by Brother Sam Reynolds, who's later in this presentation, a couple times. It was a banner year. It was a banner year for some of us. So I want to highlight some of the successes and breakthroughs we saw from Black astrologers. I want to give thanks to Sam, aka Unlock Astrology, Praxis Astrology, and Taylor Ray Astrology for doing a few things to inspire this presentations and the action items that will follow from at least myself, if not also you listening and or watching this presentation. I'm going to go through 5 categories, self-selected, that start to gather and organize and group some of these achievements that we saw amongst Black astrologers. The first of the 5 is in the media and the news. Let me say, before I go further, this is by no means supposed to be all Black astrologers or even in the US or comprehensive. This is what I was able to find over a good many days, gathering them together and not even giving each person their full due. Again, I just wanted to highlight Gemini rising here and survey, because there is a lot here, a lot of juicy bits, as some folks will say. So first up, I want to highlight Dion Mitchell, who is the youngest astrologer among the array here. We have almost 24. Dion is a first year at MIT. And has been with astrology for a good few years. Dion was named, seen, and quoted, and also featured in a Boston Globe article in print and online. A fantastic picture and just great coverage when sometimes astrology is disparaged. This was quite the opposite. I want to move on to one of my collaborators in this array, and my buddies and also fellow New Yorkers, Janelle Belgrave. Janelle had a lot going on, as again, most of us did in 2020, professionally and otherwise. Janelle, one of the heights from where I'm sitting, scored the highest profile mainstream TV appearance by a Black astrologer in 2020. And probably ever. This was a segment from Vice, and I'll share links. I'll share a good few links with folks below the presentation. Adama, probably the most prolific writer in the last of this array of the last astrological year, and also someone that was in quite a few, I don't know if we still use this term, I do, listicles, 10 Black women astrologers to pay attention to. There was an article with 8. There was another listicle article, another one with 7, and a couple other that are vague in my head, but they might all be mixing together at this point. There was a lot of fantastic and appreciated coverage from mainstream outlets, some of which are not traditional news, but some of these very large websites and social media platforms. Just to shout out Cosmo, who shows up implicitly in a few other places in this presentation and beyond. They have really pushed astrology forward by way of magazines in not even the last 5 years, in some very important and inclusive ways. Wrapping up this section is Tracy Rogers. Tracy rocked a CBS Sunday morning segment only a few weeks ago on Super Bowl Sunday. This segment, the whole episode was of Sunday morning, if I've got it right, was about the Super Bowl. This segment was about astrology, right? Surprise. And it talked some about the Super Bowl and certainly the pandemic. This was a peak moment for Black astrology, right? This is in 2021, so takes what Janelle does and then does a hold my beer and then adds to it. This was also a great media moment for astrology overall. This is three women from really different lanes of astrology. Susan Miller is one of the other two women featured in this segment. Really, Susan Miller is one of the world's most known astrologers outside, and some are telling me even inside India. India being very astrology's, I think I could say always over centuries, really over millennia at this point, has always been respected and loved there. Moving on, publishing, we saw some amazing things, and there is a lot more brewing for the coming astrological new year, 2021 to 2022, and the one after that that I know about. There's probably a ton that still hasn't come onto my radar. Taylor Moon left the prior astrological year, 2019 to 2020, as did Shakira. We'll hear about more later. They both published books in the Barnes and Noble's Zodiac Signs book set, right? So there's a book for every zodiac sign, 12 books. Only 11 authors, someone did 2. Taylor Moon did the Aquarius in that set. Taylor also spent a lot of the last astrological year writing for various outlets, including Parade Magazine and Tarot.com. Just a couple other highlights here is that begat a couple opportunities. One ongoing. Taylor's the resident astrologer for a Chicago wellness studio. And then I want some of this action, and as a participant, gave an astrology workshop for YouTube's employee wellness retreat, right? So these are not unheard of, at least in my experiences, but they're they used to be uncommon. Whole different presentation, but astrology really is shifting in how it's being accepted and embraced and utilized by the public. Sam Reynolds, I mentioned already to you. Sam, in the last year, well, I'll just focus in the last year. There's a lot of great work that Sam has been and continues to do. Let me back off the slide for a second and say Sam co-founded ISBA, the International Society of Black Astrologers. The International Society of Black Astrologers. I'm saying that twice just because it's lengthy. There's quite a few syllables in there. I'm the step parent of this Facebook group. We're not an organization officially as of this recording, but we may be before we get to the next astrological new year in 2022. Sam did some things very deliberately to help double the size of our group. So we are well into the 4, or a little bit into the 4 figures now. This is important. I'm sorry I didn't say ISBA is only Black astrologers. It is only Black astrologers. He worked his media magic in other places for ISBA and well beyond, including in a major Newsweek article right about mid-year into June, if I recall. And then at the end of the year, came back with, and I believe engineered an article about astrology being a $2 billion, billion as in boy, as in boom, industry. And that is a piece in Business Insider. I'm going to do a roll up because I want to see what all is in there of the articles that I know about. And I'll let that piece evolve from the amazing coverage that Black astrologers received and were part of in the last astrological new year. And then wrapping up this section, Michael Bryan, go Michael, set fire to YouTube and the astro world generally by podcasting/interviewing astrology world legends, elders, and even some recluses, right? We don't see these people, hear from them, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or anything. In that, he also pioneered Black astrologer roundtable conversations, where that I was a part of, and Sam was, and a couple more names coming up. Just got to shoot the shit, but we recorded it and put it out in public. In fact, both of those should be on YouTube still. Moving on to the next section, New Worlds. And in this, you'll see within really is riffing off the Aquarius energy and archetype that's so important to this decade of the 2020s we're in, from here on, and the 2030s. Um, you may know about the great conjunction in this Jupiter Saturn met in the sky at 0 degrees, 0 degrees Aquarius. That is going to push us, it already has been, and the first so many weeks, to remix things, to reframe things, to be turned on their head. And one of my favorite sort of cliches that I think goes with this sort of Aquarius energy, flipping the script. Doing just that, the very creative Miss Chartreuse taught mindfulness with music and hashtag cover girl scopes with music videos, all while creating the 1111 solar sun with Ray's system community. There's a lot more, again, to say about Ms. Chartreuse and many of us here. I'm just giving some highlights to keep this shorter than not, but also to give a survey of, wow, the many places that we have been in this last year. Cameron Allen really just brought the business in so many different ways. A couple key highlights here: started working with Yoga Journal and writing a monthly article for them. They're also collaborating on some other offerings that'll come to the public later into calendar 2021. He also had massive success with a new e-course, Health Secrets of the Zodiac, that is presented by Astrology Hub. I want to say a lot of things about we need more medical astrology. And so I will say that and leave it there. And I'm glad to see a brother be part of that shift. I want to go to my girl, my neighbor, fellow New Yorker, and another collaborator. We collaborate with Janelle on the Stars on Fire astrology podcast. Please check that out. NECA broke new worlds here and really inspired the title for this section. She collaborated on a new beer flavor that necessarily has astrology as part of it. She co-created, she guest starred on a jazz album with Marquise Hill, a musician, a very talented musician here in New York City, and then signed another book deal and is already off to the races and maybe off to the editors with this book. That book is due in August 2021 and hopefully won't shift around, as I know a lot of books have in the pandemic. And I want to shout out Mecca here for intending to break new ground and have fun with certainly astrology, but her work, right? All of us here are professional astrologers, and I think almost all of us are full-time in whatever our lane and lanes are. Omari Martin, pardon me, out of Chicago. This brother's doing a lot also behind the scenes, is the leader of a few different things, not the least of which is the very, very long-running Friends of Astrology. Specific to this astrological new year, Omar might be the most prolific presenter of this array. And certainly one of the most, if not the most. Two unique things he did in this last year I want to shout out here is he co-created, as his role as president of the board of Kepler College, a diversity scholarship committee, which isn't just scholarships and getting people access in that way. It's also bringing more people onto the speaking roster, which is an issue we see across different fields and industry. Astrology, for sure, is not exempt from that. And he also registered or finished the registration process, he's been at this for a minute, for his own creation of astropreneurship. So he has that service mark very early on back in April of 2020. Again, many more things to say about everybody, not the least of whom Omari is. Omari might be Omari is one of our elders here, right? I guess I'm one of them too now. So we have been making inroads and doing all sorts of things for a minute. Kimmy is one of the few people I have not gotten to bond and connect with yet here. Kimmy worked with Tarjay, y'all, aka Target, if you haven't heard the beloved nickname before, on a new astrology series as a paid astrologer. This is huge. You know, Target is still one of the biggest brands out there. Obviously, retailers, or maybe not obviously if you don't know them. I've lived in Minnesota, so Target's been a big deal for well over 20 years, and kind of keeps things interesting and fun, and inclusive and diverse for more than a minute. Let's move on to the fourth section. There are 5 total here. This was about money. Money is part of, right, not just the income, but payroll and outsourcing and. Stormy Grace did some amazing, amazing work in the last year. Maybe the key highlight is successfully kickstarting a campaign of about $34,000 to fund a free year-long YouTube astrology academy that, quote unquote, anyone around the world can partake of. This is going to start up right into this new astrological year, 2021, Aries 2021 through Pisces 2022. And she's got dozens of astrologers, big names, emerging names, small names, names we need to know and will soon know, teaching alongside her. One of the most impactful and biggest and most important stories in astrology, not just Black astrology, but astrology of the last year, was led by Dijenaba. Leads a 4-person team that's going to bring us Mercury's Brood, an astrology anthology that centers Blackness. Y'all, we don't have much out here at all that's centered on Blackness and astrology, or enough of it. Mercury's Brood led a campaign that, just as a Kickstarter, is astounding. They asked for $30,000, right? Not a small sum, but not a huge sum, really. If you have a budget like that, you'll see how quick it goes. They got $80,000, y'all, just by asking and pushing and asking the community. This is huge, y'all. And this is one of 3 Kickstarters here, right? You just heard Stormy had one. Dijenaba has this one with the Mercury's Brood team. And then I'll come to the third one at the end. That is actually my Kickstarter. This is the last section. And forgive me, I am speaking fast. I am a New Yorker, have been for well over a decade. And I am trying to keep this under a half an hour, which I hope to do. Leadership, I'm definitely thinking about the politics. I'm thinking about astro orgs and astro businesses. Bear River is the first Black person to serve on AFAN's steering committee in many, many years, maybe ever. AFAN is Association, let me get it right, for Astrological Networking. It is one of the legacy astro orgs. There are 5 or 6 US-based. You'll hear about very important and maybe the oldest in the English-speaking world, if not the world, in a few slides here that is overseas from the US. The steering committee, I want to say, you're like, what's the steering committee? It's a remix of a board. It is working on a consensus model, which is very, very different, excuse me, than we can see in DC right now than majority rule or filibustering or whatever we want to do. I also want to say Bear was joined by Stormy Grace in a stint serving on the AFAN steering committee. So we got 2 Black people on the steering committee in the last astrological year. Speaking of legacy astro orgs, Clarissa Dolphin was elected to the ESAR board of directors. This is the first Black woman from quite a bit of research I've done, and I'm one of the few Black people to also have served on astrological legacy astro.org board. That would be NCGR, a, a clean decade ago now. This is pretty big, and I think there are some interesting things that I realized putting this together and thinking about the significance of Clarissa's election, which in some ways loosely parallels, Kamala Harris's footsteps here and being the US VP. Maybe the biggest score among the astrological orgs as far as leadership, at least that I'm aware for Black astrologers, is Israel became president for the Astrological Lodge of London. I mentioned a moment ago or two about astro orgs. This of London well, maybe there are Londons in the US, but this is the London, right, over in the United Kingdom, which we've been hearing quite a bit about in the news. But staying focused here, this lodge is over a century old, right? 100 plus years. It was founded by the astrologer and a few others, Alan Leo. Alan Leo is very important when we look at the history of astrology in the 20th century. This is no small achievement and a big deal. And he is now, I believe, the first Black head of any astro org in the world. And I want to say that these astro orgs, these legacy astro orgs, are necessarily a lot of multicultural, right? These are not Black space specific, right? For sure, there are Black organizations, astrology organizations that have been, will be, and I'm doing some work on that, which we'll come to. Give me a minute here, and I'll come to a bit of that. Kira Taborn, this millennial just gives me life and excitement in so many ways with the energy and the intent put into the world. Kira had a lot of things happen in 2020, 2021, right? This astrological year that I'm covering here today. A couple of those are becoming the new director of Fresh Voices in Astrology. Fresh Voices was founded 3 years ago to bring more diversity to the virtual stage and had its third summit under Kira's leadership back in August 2020. Kira has also gotten a really nice rhythm going of monthly talks from Fresh Voices with a variety and a diversity of different voices in astrology there. Kira also launched an astro community riffing off all this Aquarius that's out there and present now. It's a community in a school called the 11th House. This was a great play in a few ways. Business, serving what people have been asking for that unfortunately the legacy astro orgs haven't really got a good hold of, and offering another school. There are too few astrology schools in the world, and most of them are not woman-led, much less BIPOC-led. So lots of great groundbreaking there and success. I've put myself last because I had a banner year, as I may have said at the top of this presentation. Without going all the way into it, what I want to say is thank you for listening this far. Thank you for supporting astrologers that are pushing forward in healthy and happy ways. It's such a great tool kit that I think humanity quite seriously, if not even desperately, needs to navigate the challenges of the 2020s and the rest of the 21st century. Y'all, I produced a few things. Let me see. I did a Kickstarter for Black astrologers yesterday, which is a film short. I'm looking all the way back. We're starting with Benjamin Banneker all the way forward to Mecca Wood, you heard about earlier, and her publishing success in 2018, being the first Black person and woman of color to publish from a mainstream publisher in at least a decade, if not more. And that actually, pardon me, as part of a new wave of astrology books being published by mainstream publishers, which includes some people of color and some Black folks, two others that you heard about already in this presentation. The film short I hope to have out in 2022, we'll leave that there. Keep an eye and ear out for that. I also finally was able to realize virtually, because it was a pandemic, right? Black Astrology Conference in October 2020. Many things to say about that. I'll say it was Black only audience, or supposed to be. That was really powerful for all of us that was there. That was really powerful. We'll see more of that in the near future. And I also got to produce what ended up being a bigger bite that I intended, but I was able to chew through it and realize it in Single Parent Queer Astrology Conference 2020 in July. That's a whole presentation or 5 unto itself. So much there I learned there. It felt like a thesis or a dissertation culmination of astrologer conferences that I have studied and worked on over the last decade plus. That broke some new ground, including paying everybody that worked on it. And there were dozens and dozens of people, including myself, obviously, but the roster, which was BIPOC heavy. We also riffed off of what Michael did and had a Black Astrologers Rainbow Roundtable, right? Black queer astrologers conversation, which was really potent and powerful. Those presentations are available out there for a suggested price. You can go to Q Astro, Q as in question or queer, .org, and it'll push you through. And you can look at those. I think it's 36, give or take a couple on that number, streaming audios and videos for that. Okay, I'm probably over time here. I want to say thank you again for staying with this presentation since you're still here. I very much appreciate your support, as in financial, for this work and more like this. Venmo, Demetrius JB, DEMETRIUS, Cash App, Demetrius Bagley, BAGLEY, or paypal.me/vegand. I'm Demetrius Bagley. I am a Black astrologer. I'm a producer astrologer, and I'm excited to see what the sequel to this presentation will be next year. Bye.